great pleasure to introduce Mr. Steve Schwarzman. Mr. Schwarzman, welcome to India. Thank you for joining us. I have your book and I have read your book. My compliments for such a wonderful book. When I was reading the book, the thought which came to my mind is that how should I introduce you? Should I introduce you as one of the richest men on the planet who's changed the rules of private equity, or should I introduce you as someone who is a philanthropist and is giving time and money both back to the society to simply solve complex problems? So how should I introduce you? Who is Steve Schwarzman?
Well, apparently there are a bunch of Steve Schwarzmans, but from my perspective, there's only one, and that's a person who tries to do new things, tries to create things. If it's commercial, we like to try and be the best in the world at what we do. If it's in the philanthropic area, it's trying to basically deal with some of the major problems that are affecting the world. And I also try and help my government from time to time with some issues that they have. So what you find when you get older, you can do all of these things. And from the perspective of the person doing it, they have a huge similarity. They're all designed to start something new, to address an issue that's important.
You had middle class background, and you are amongst one of the most successful people on this planet. What is the secret sauce? Why have you reached, and how have you reached? Where have you reached?
Well, I still think I'm like a middle class person. I haven't changed. I just get a chance to do things that are large. I like to create important things. What happens by accident when you create great organizations and attract wonderful people to work with you, that you achieve things that, if they're economic, you have an economic value. If they're, charitable things, then you have the satisfaction of knowing you've done, wonderful things to affect other people and their lives. I've just always liked to win things. I don't know where that came from. I think it was my mother, who really had a lot of drive. But at that time, in certainly U.S. history, women weren't going to work. They weren't allowed by the mores of the time to be chief executive officers. That's all changed. My mother would have been one of those people to achieve a certain eminence in our society.
What prompted you to write this book? Because it is always believed that investors have an edge, but in this book you've shared the secrets. How have you done the Tropicana deal? How you've done some other deals? So why are you sharing your edge in a book, and what prompted you to write this book?
Well, I started thinking about writing it because Hank Paulson, who was Secretary of the Treasury, suggested I do that 10 years ago. I told him I wasn't ready, but what happens, you get to be a certain age, you look continually forward at your career, but you realize when people ask you, how does something work, what should I be doing, I actually had answers, and those answers came from my experience, and I thought that it would be useful to share that so other people wouldn't have to have the same mistakes that I did. If I could make their life better, easier, give them direction, it was a good thing to do. I'm giving away all the proceeds of the book to charity, so it's not an economic thing. It's probably the worst economic decision I've ever made because it takes a lot of time to write.
You've mentioned in the book that if you want to be successful, you need to do something which is different. You need to identify the need of the society and then scale it up. So to your mind, what currently is the need of the society?
Which?
In terms of the economic activity or any trend which you think is the need of the society?
Well, that changes over time in terms of where the opportunity is. When I was younger, finance was a great opportunity globally. It still is because governments keep printing so much money that there's always more money you can do something innovative with. Right now, both healthcare and technology are two very interesting areas, as well as finance.
When you started your career, you were in the business of raising capital for big companies. But if I look at the top 3 biggest companies in the world, they've been born out of a garage, they've not raised capital, and the market capitalization is more than $1 trillion. Is the world around us changing, and is the need of capital changing?
Well, those companies each have a very unique position where apparently they can charge large amounts of money for their services, and the services don't cost that much to deliver. So they have very large profit margins. Some of those companies have become synonymous with that service. So if you want that service, you have to deal with them. Consequently, they have huge levels of profitability. Not all companies are like that. Most companies don't have that special sauce, and so they need financing. And fortunately for companies like Blackstone, we provide that in a variety of different ways, from owning the companies or the real estate to lending to other companies. And that works out well for us. I think there's no prospect that the use of capital will be going down, particularly with the world slowing at the moment. And with the virus, some companies are going to be very adversely affected, not by the virus itself, but by the result of the virus economically, and they're going to be needing increasing amounts of financing.
Do you think growth concerns which have come back are because of the virus issue, they are exaggerated, or growth is going to slow down and you will not be surprised that we will hit recession somewhere?
Well, I don't look forward to a recession, but I think it's pretty clear that growth is going to slow. Supply chains are being interfered with. There are all kinds of odd types of things. Anything that's touching transportation now, particularly international transportation, is going to be very adversely affected. Anything where crowds get together, from conventions to sports activities to all kinds of unanticipated changes, but it's going to be short term because all of the pharmaceutical executives I talk to say that there should be a vaccine in the next year to year and a quarter, which then will take the coronavirus in effect off the table as an economic impact. And the world's reacting much more outside of India, ironically, in a very accelerated way. It seems to me to be pretty calm here at the moment on this particular issue.
You've dedicated a lot of pages to China in your book. Now, China is not growing at the same rate at which it was growing. Now there is a virus issue, and the economy is also quietly, it's leverage which is also slowing down China. And on top of that, there is trade war. So what is your view on China, given that the backdrop right now is very unpredictable?
Well, China is a pretty remarkable country. As you know, it's now the second largest economy in the world, and 40 years ago, the average wealth per capita, GDP per capita, was $300. Now it's $10,000, which is a good deal higher than the average Indian GDP per capita. So China's got a lot of momentum, but it's also, of course, got issues, particularly in the short term, as a result of the virus, where they were the center of that in Wuhan, and they're trying to get that under control. It may be the first time that China has negative growth in decades. People aren't working necessarily. They had their New Year's break, which is about 2 weeks, and not everybody's coming back. And so it'll take a while for their economy to normalize. But one thing is for sure, they have enormous drive as individuals and as a country, and whether they have a setback for a year or less or more, I tend to look at things over decades. And I think that they'll continue to be a very important country in the world.
So let me take a leaf from your answer, which is decades. And historically, we've seen that the superpower or the economic changes have happened. 1970s was dominated by Japan, then came US blue chip stocks, then US TMT, then came China. Last 10 years, it's been all about the US tech companies. This decade, it belongs to which country? US, India, China, or something we don't know today?
Well, it's changing at the moment. Right as we sit here, the US will still remain as a very vital economy. China will also be in that type of position. I think it's tougher for the Europeans than it had been in earlier decades. I think if India gets its financial sector in the kind of position it's in, then it can resume extremely strong rates of growth. It's got a very young population and increasingly educated, with the government putting more and more money into education. So India is now the fifth biggest country in the world economically. That's pretty amazing in terms of the progress, and it can accelerate its growth with the right policies. Right now, for example, India trains 7 times the number of engineers a year than the United States does. Over time, that's very powerful. So I could see India having a very good run in the future.
As an investor, the minute I say India, what does come to your mind?
Excitement. India, we started in India in 2006, and I made some announcements about how much money we'd put in. It was on the front page of newspapers because at that point, people didn't have the confidence that we did at Blackstone. And we remain very confident. Whether India is a little experiencing slower growth at the moment, a little higher inflation, these are things that can be corrected over the intermediate term. And with the scale population, whenever you get younger people, and India will have the largest group of young people in the world, and you educate them, then the power to transform and accelerate growth in that type of society is really terrific.
So if I have to make a headline out of this interaction, when I go back, what should be the headline? Blackstone is looking at dialing up the investments. They're happy about the India investments. 2006, you gave me a headline. This is 2020. Let's look at another headline. How much is Blackstone looking at investing in India next couple of years?
Well, you're going to have to write your own headlines. I can't do that for you. But on the Blackstone front, we invested $6 billion here in the last year. We have very clear ideas of what we want to do, both in our private equity area as well as in real estate. We're going to stick to those. And I think what's going to happen is, assuming continual sort of unsettlement in a way economically in the short term, that for a firm like Blackstone, we will be very committed. And I'd even use the word, you would regard it as sort of aggressive. We don't regard it as aggressive. It's just something that works for us, that we have a green light on for doing more and more things in India. It's been a great market for Blackstone.
Globally, you run the largest real estate fund in the world. In India also, almost half your book is in real estate. Investing in real estate is very complex, very local. State issues are there, country-specific issues are there. What makes you and your firm a great real estate investor?
Well, it's really fascinating. I remember when we did our first real estate investment, I guess it was around 1991, 92. It sort of seemed to me at the time pretty much of a no-brainer at the bottom of a recession. And we've continued, and now we're the largest real estate investor in the world. And we've had almost no losses, very little in the way of losses, much less than a bank would have as a senior lender. We put in the equity. I think part of it is care and sobriety, if you will. We don't get carried away, but we always find interesting areas that we know are going to do well. There's a lot of different types of real estate. We've concentrated globally in warehouses where we've bought, and since 2011, about 1 billion square feet. Even for India, that's a big number. The reason we did it is we saw the patterns of shopping changing, going online, and all those online companies like Amazon need warehouse space for deliveries. And so we exited around the world, different in India, but around the world the mall business got to be very difficult. And so we saw that early. We liked hotels. We were the largest owner of hotels. And then we got to the point where we said, you know, the economy's really humming. I don't think we can do particularly better. And we sold the vast majority of those. So part of what we do is in India, we identified the tech companies and the need for the IT companies to have office space. And so now we're the largest owner, for example, of offices in India. And we have plans to double our exposure there. You know, we have about 700,000 people who are in our office buildings. And it's exciting because people from around the world want to be in India working with the great companies here.
I'll take the clock back to an experience which you're sharing in your book. When I was growing up, I read about Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. They were college dropouts. And perhaps that's what changed their destiny when they decided not to pursue higher education. But you've explicitly mentioned that you went to Harvard and you decided not to drop out. So what is the importance of good college education for somebody who's still in college? He should get inspired by you because you completed Harvard, focused on Bill Gates and Steve Jobs who dropped out.
Well, I'd say that Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were somewhat odd. There are about 7 billion people in the world, and the number of Bill Gateses and Steve Jobs, you can count probably on 2 hands. For the rest of us who have more modest talents, we actually have to prepare ourselves as best we can. And to do that, you know, education is really important. And sticking with it and getting foundational skills is essential. You know, having your brain working really well and understanding more than you can by just stumbling around and making mistakes. You're much better served with a great education. I believe that 100%.
You are doing fairly well in your professional career, at least that's what the book seems to be indicating. Yet in 1985, you decided to start your own firm. What prompted you to take risk? Starting a business is risk.
Well, actually, if you ask most entrepreneurs, and I'm an entrepreneur, whether they're taking risk, they'll tell you they don't think they're taking risk. You think they're taking risk, but nobody likes to take risk. I thought we'd be successful quite easily. As it worked out, I was wrong. It wasn't so easy. If I knew how hard it was, I'm not sure I would have done it. And that's like most entrepreneurs. And so I did that because the firm I was working, Lehman Brothers, basically almost went bankrupt. That was in 1984. It managed to do it in 2008. It took it a while. They finally achieved their objective. But you know, when I didn't want to stay when the firm was sold to the American Express Company, so I went with the former chairman, and the two of us started an investment banking boutique, of which at that time there were none. We just assumed it would work. We were doing the same basic kind of things: merger and acquisition advisory work, sort of private equity, starting some other businesses. I didn't quite understand that there wasn't another company like that. I just thought it was logical, and it turned out to be that way, but it wasn't a straight line, and there were lots of setbacks.
How did you deal with the collapse of your stock in 2008? $31 became $3, 90% drop.
Yeah, I found that somewhat disappointing. You know, the average financial stock went down 85%, and we were always an overachiever, so we went down 90. And my brothers asked me the same thing. They said, "Steve, why aren't you upset about that?" I said, well, you know, the underpinnings of the global financial system almost, you know, wrecked the system. We're temporarily down. And I said, we'll come back. Firm's in great shape. We'd gone public and raised billions of dollars. You know, we had no debt. We had raised all of our funds. So I said, we're just temporarily going to be down. I said, I don't look at the stock and what it personally means to me on any regular basis. I'm in the business of creating and building. And, you know, the whole world was down. As it worked out, in the next 11 years, almost every financial institution was shrinking, and we grew 6.5 times at Blackstone. 6.5 times. And so the stock was in the 60s, up from $3.55. So that's up, I don't know, somewhere around close to 20 times.
20x.
And so, am I surprised? No. What's important is that we do what we're supposed to do, protect capital, expand in new areas, and that's how you become successful. Don't worry about these extraneous things. Always do a great job for your customer. If you do, you'll get more and more customers.
Okay, closing question. Blackstone is all about talent. For talent, you need to hire well. When you hire a person, what are the things you look at? Skill, will, attitude?
Well, I have fun hiring people. I always like meeting new people. By the time they get to me now, because the firm's larger, usually they've met 15 or 20 other people. So by the time they meet me, they're qualified. But that's not the issue for me. I assume they're pretty much qualified. I like trying to figure out who they are. How does this person think? How are they going to think under stress? Are they curious? Are they comfortable within their own skin? Do you think they'll do well with other people? Or are they isolated types of individuals? How smart are they?
So what is the trick to crack a Blackstone interview? Your hiring ratio is 0.6%.
Well, it is daunting, to get hired. But you know, when I am interviewing somebody, I like to have a good time. I like to imagine I'm seeing that person on a regular basis. Are they curious? If I throw something out to talk about, are they scared of that, or do they enjoy it? If they don't know something, are they candid enough to say, I'm really not comfortable with that. I don't know much about that area. That's okay. You don't have to have all answers. But how do you handle, you know, sort of dealing with a grown-up who doesn't really think he's a grown-up? I think I'm the same age as them.
So let me end the interview on a high note. As an interviewer, I really had a wonderful time in interacting with you. It's the first time I've interacted with you personally. So thank you for your time and enjoy your stay in India.